Hello, everybody. I'm Bob Fisher. It's my honor to be the president of the Nevada Broadcasters Association. It's also my pleasure to welcome you to the annual Sun Youth Forum panel discussion right here on television. You know, Las Vegas Sun founder Hank Greenspun and Ruthie Deskin believed so long ago that young people had something to say, and not only something to say, but that they needed to be heard. Their idea was to provide a forum where students could come together and they could exchange ideas on a variety of different issues. Since 1955, Nevada high school students have been doing just that. Recently, close to 1,000 junior and senior high school students, they all gathered together at the Las Vegas Convention Center. It was that time again, the Las Vegas Sun Youth Forum. Students were assigned to different groups where they discussed different topics. It ranged everything from jobs and Social Security to drugs and foreign policy. Finalists were actually selected at the end of the day in each of the groups to summarize the conclusions of their group in a public forum. I'm pleased that you are about to see one of those forums, which is the TV show. I'm joined by 6 wonderful, wonderful high school students. And what I'd like you to do is to introduce yourself, your name, the school that you're going to, if you know what school you're going to be going to, and if you have any idea simply what you want to do the rest of your life. So why don't we start right with you?
Hey, I'm Joseph Chung. I go to Advanced Technologies Academy, ATEC, and I'm hoping to go to MIT, but I'm also looking at something called a BSMD program, a medical program at UNR. And from the UNR statement, I really want to be a doctor, and especially internal medicine.
Hi, my name is Joshua Lewis, and I attend Cimarron Memorial High School. I hope to get into Berkeley, where I plan on studying chemical engineering.
Hello everyone, my name is Falguni Vetri-Selvin, and I also attend Advanced Technologies Academy. At that school, I'm a law major, but hopefully I want to study at Princeton University and study international relations and become a diplomat.
Hi, I'm Valerie Lavenberg. I am a senior at Las Vegas Academy. I hope to go to Stanford to study biology. My dream is to become a doctor.
Hi, my name is Dylan Ong. I'm from Palo Verde High School. I was recently accepted, early decision, to Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. And I would plan to dual degree in mathematics and music education. And in my future, I wish to pursue music, whether it's performing or teaching.
Hi, my name is Blake Coates. I attend Desert Oasis High School. In the fall of 2014, I plan on attending the Colorado School of Mines, or CU Boulder. Is also in Colorado. I intend on majoring in physics, which hopefully after I graduate, I plan to attend Yale for my graduate degree in physics. My dream job is to be an astrophysicist, but physics opens the door for any kind of engineering degree, so I'm set.
Hi, I'm Bob Fisher. I went to the University of Minnesota before all of you were born. We have a lot to discuss. But before we get started, let's take a look at this year's Sun Youth Forum.
About 1,000 of Clark County's best and brightest students showcased their knowledge at the 57th Annual Sun Youth Forum. Students split into groups to discuss many topics from the local economy to issues not so close to home.
I'm in the section Teen Topics, and what we've discussed so far is how technology is affecting youth today.
They discussed bullying, gerrymandering, and many more hot-button issues.
We have questions like the drawbacks from the two-party system. We have questions like, what should we do with the illegal immigrants in the country?
The forum was designed to give the youth of Clark County a voice, and participants are hoping their voices are heard.
Adults who run Nevada will be able to see how some of the youth are feeling about some of these events. So, based on it, whether we are overall positive or negative concerning certain things, we might be able to sway some opinions.
It's nice to point that to a person who's, of power, has some type of stance in our society, to be able to tell them, like, this is how we feel, this is what we think, and so people know that we're not just some ignorant generation of teenagers.
Because many community leaders are serving as moderators, Desert Oasis High School teacher Jerome Streets emphasizes the importance of listening to the ideas students are offering.
Our leaders, if they listen to these kids, they come up with solutions that we as adults would never even think about. And it's great to hear those things.
Not only is this experience important for the community, but students benefit personally as well.
And it gives you an opportunity to network with people and be able to develop those kind of skills.
For many of the students participating, this is only the beginning.
I currently have one of our former students from Sierra Vista when I taught there. She's working with Senator Heller in Washington, D.C. It started here for her. She came to the forum.
Just because it's fun doesn't make it easy. The advice for future participants? Be prepared.
I would encourage future participants to study current events before coming. Research a lot.
Be ready, have your research, and know your stuff.
Also, speak up.
Don't be afraid to say how you feel.
Just go in there with the full mentality of accepting what everyone else's opinions are and giving your own, and just make sure you always give your opinion.
For UNLV TV, I'm Cassidy Blue Forrester.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to do the Sun Youth Forum. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask one person to start. And we're going to actually do, for a few minutes, the Sun Youth Forum. The person that I'm asking becomes the moderator. He or she will introduce what we're going to be talking about, and then let it fly. Okay? Falcone, let's start with you first.
Well, I'm certainly starting with a pretty light topic today. We're going to be discussing capital punishment versus life imprisonment.
Light topic?
Yeah, very light.
Okay.
That was sarcastic in case, yeah. So does anyone have any comments or opinions on this so far?
What did your group decide as a whole or come to the conclusion on capital punishment and the like?
We actually weren't able to get a consensus on the issue because there was so much varied opinion. Well, as a moderator, I can't really tell you what side I lean, but what are like the main issues that you guys feel when just hearing this topic, or what kind of comes to mind?
When I think of capital punishment, the problem that I have with the alternative of life imprisonment is that we're expecting the taxpayers to fund these people to stay in there, and we're paying for them to stay there for long periods of time, well, life. And I just don't think that's fair that we're supporting them to stay there. Now, prison's obviously not the best place in the world, but I certainly prefer the alternative if we have a choice.
Ironically, on the economic perspective, it is actually cheaper to keep a prison mate in life imprisonment than actually paying for all the appeals process, the attorney fees, the court fees basically that comes with capital punishment and death row. So that was another issue that was talked about. And what my, group came up with was fast tracking the appeals process, but then there was a whole other discussion about the problems that came with making such a process shorter. So what do you guys feel about
Yes,
that?
I don't think that it is possible to cut down the appeals process because, we are deciding whether a person is going to be put to death or not. And that's very complicated. And if someone was to decide to put someone down or to kill someone,
Well, that's really putting them down.
yeah, it is.
Big time.
And it's not something you can speed up and rush through. That's something that takes time, and therefore we need the appeals process.
Well, yeah, we do, but the problem with the appeals process at the moment is the way that it works is, correct me if I'm wrong, the courts basically place every single thing that they have to check a list first. So you go through this, and it's supposed to make sure, like what you said, we don't accidentally execute someone that's innocent. The problem is, though, there's so many windows for people to appeal again. So even if they eventually go through the process, the appeals process takes forever when, in all honesty, it can be streamlined. It can still achieve what it should, but the way it works at the moment, it's a little rough around the edges.
But where do you set the bar on the streamlining of the process? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, where do you say, okay, this is enough appeals to decide someone's life, to decide if they deserve to live or if they deserve to die. You know what I mean? Like,
Well-
there needs to be a bar set where it's like, okay, this is enough. Like, we've streamlined it enough. And at that point, is it still enough to?
I think a beginning would be like getting, for example, charges that have anything to do with the actual crime. You don't list the crime, as far as I understand, on these, right? It's more of they kind of make sure that they basically find what they can catch you for. They check off this, and you can appeal. They check off this, you can appeal. It's like that. So if at least that part of the process was streamlined, I think that's something we can definitely do now.
Well, you have to look at the states as well, though, because every state has a different way of dealing with it. There's certain states that do have fast processes that they go through. There's other ones that you're on there for years and years at a time.
Are we speaking about state or federal?
It's on like the federal level, but
Okay.
it is something that the states do decide. So if you want to take a federal initiative, it's something that you have to get all the states to get behind. But I think they were just talking more on, they were looking at morally, economically, how to streamline the process basically, and where that limit should be. And it's a hard decision, and there's a lot of things to consider. What Joseph was talking about was, as the prosecution tends to do, they like to put like a list of crimes that they can get the defendant for, and so they will put like first-degree murder when the crime itself is not first-degree murder, and then they'll settle for something less. But that also takes time, and it takes, if for some reason the charge is, a jury comes out and says he's guilty of first-degree murder, but then the crime that he committed didn't exactly fit that spectrum, then he appeals, and then he keeps appealing. And so that's why it sometimes gets
Dylan, what do you think?
Well, personally, I think that through the federal level, if you just want to streamline the whole system of appeals, that capital punishment is a violation of the Eighth Amendment. I believe that is cruel and unusual punishment, and that if the federal government decided to, or the Supreme Court decided to incorporate that in all state legislatures, it should be abolished because it is not economically feasible to keep them in maximum security for years and years at a time and have to pay these litigious fees, which are still paid out of pocket from the taxpayer. So I also believe that it's just highly immoral.
Piggybacking on that,
I think that death penalty is immoral.
Yes.
Is murder immoral?
Yes, it is, but it just shows, different state governments, experience recidivism into an eye for an eye justice.
Yeah, you don't have to be morally punish someone that did something immoral.
But I feel there's a certain line to draw where punishment, or where a crime turns into not just a murder, or you know what I mean? Like, there are certain murders and certain crimes that are committed that are so heinous that they break the bonds of morality. You know what I mean? Like,
but should that be society's say whether we keep them alive or not?
In fact, for the life of me, I can't remember the case. It was about two young boys murdering another kid out of fun, and what was
usually
remember what it was called? It was
but those kind of that.
No, but
if
the
they're younger,
idea,
then it's real. They wouldn't get
but
first
the
degree.
idea,
They wouldn't even.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying. I'm bringing that up because the question of morality was brought up, and even though I don't remember all of the case, the lawyer did appeal that, saying that for our greater humanity, don't just kill people because they killed, right? I also don't really believe in capital punishment because, first of all, again, economically infeasible compared to like just keeping them for life. And also I kind of believe in second chances, and just I don't really think that no matter how evil a person can be, just killing them off doesn't really.
But life imprisonment is not going to give them second
Yeah,
chances.
that's what I'm saying.
No, but at
these
least
people that get first degree murder,
But-
the charge is definitely a hefty one.
because that brings up the issue of prison reform as well, you know what I mean? Because if I'm going to give you life even though you committed that crime, then I expect you to give something back to society, you know what I mean? Whereas Charles Manson, for example, life imprisonment, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So what is he doing to give back to society? Do you know what I mean? Like, there should be some kind of, some way that he can make up to it, you know what I mean? But then again, how do you...
So if you do something wrong and can't pay it back, you should be one-offed?
I'm not, but
Like,
why
that's-
couldn't you pay?
But I
I'm
think
not
that's
saying
the whole point
not
of
monetary
retribution
necessarily.
for the victim's family. I think that's a big point in why capital punishment is so
it provides
popular.
closure.
But
yeah.
how do you give these capital offenders a second chance if they're executed before any?
I don't think.
I don't
that-
think we should.
I don't
give
think they
them
deserve a second chance.
Because my thing is do we give them a second chance and risk the lives of innocent people out there to give that one person?
No, not a second chance out in society. I'm talking about a second chance, seeing as if new forensic evidence is brought up.
Exactly. I agree with you that I don't agree with capital punishment. And a lot of that has to do with the economic, that it's cheaper to keep them in life in prison. But also, a lot of people are put on death row, and it's questionable whether they are guilty or innocent. And there needs to be solid evidence to put someone to death.
All right, so what we have now shown our viewing audience, an example of a topic. In each group, there could have been as many as 20 or 25 different high schools represented in your group. And most groups would come to some kind of conclusion at the end, some kind of consensus on whatever they were talking about. But in your group, there was no consensus.
It's kind of like what you're seeing here. A couple of people agree, and then other people, they have their own. It's not that they completely disagree, but there are valid points that, because it's such a complicated issue, there's so many opinions, and it's hard to just reach that consensus. And we didn't really. It's an issue that can be talked about for years. So, within a day and within that time period that we had, we really could not reach a conclusion.
Right, before Dylan introduces a new topic, I guess I'm the only one sitting up here who's actually viewed an execution in Carson City.
Wow.
And I happen to be standing next to the mother of the girl who was murdered at the Rent-A-Car agency. She was murdered by a tire iron. And I remember her comment, watching the person who killed her daughter die, and she turned to her husband and said, "Too quick." It was too quick.
That's why retribution is a huge factor for the victim's family.
I think pretty much all of us can agree whatever system we have now, it needs to be reformed.
There are definitely improvements that
All
can
right,
be
so
made.
Dylan, it's all yours now.
All right. One topic that.
And don't be shy.
Okay, I'll try not to.
Okay.
One topic that sparked heated debate was whether or not we should allow teachers to carry guns on campus. This is a pressing issue that all of us may have to live through one day, because in many states, teachers are allowed to carry guns on campus, or at least their school boards allow them to. So what are your guys' thoughts on that? We reached a clear consensus, but I was just curious to see what you guys would think about it.
That brings up a whole new wave of issues to deal with as well, along with the the recent movements for gun control and all that. And I think it's interesting to know, to like create an argument off of what consensus did you guys reach?
Well, basically, we thought that implementing guns in schools would create a hostile environment. Instead of schools being a place for learning and growth, they become a place where a child is scared knowing that a firearm is close in their proximity.
Now, did you guys talk about armed security officers as well?
Yes, we did.
And how did you?
We believe that they should definitely, their purpose is to ensure that students are secure, so they should be employed and they should be keeping the campus secure. But
Who pays them, first of all? Did you talk about that? Did they come from the school, or are they police?
Are you saying like a private?
Yeah, I was
private
wondering,
company
just
providing
wondering, like the
security, or-
bodyguards, because, for example, if we had police run, like some schools do, you can only have so many. The force isn't like humongous here. We're not.
They have school police that are hired by the district as well.
Yeah.
And does anyone know if security guards right now on campus, do they have guns or not?
I think at high schools they do.
They do?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the thing is, you don't really see them in elementary schools or most middle schools. So.
Because it's hard to require that in elementary schools versus high schools, because like we're so much more mature and we understand the issues with that's happened, like in Newtown or the Connecticut shooting. Like we understand that, but in elementary school you have kids going to an environment where there's firearms and they feel the need to be protected. I mean, that will subtract from their education because they're more worried about, oh, he has a gun, or I'm getting, you know what I mean? Like they're forced to have protection. So it brings up issues like is it okay in middle school? Is it okay? You know what I mean?
I think psychologically too, because if you're going to have teachers carrying guns and these are young kids and they see the people that they look up to, because teachers are kind of examples for us when we're growing up, and they see them with guns, I think they'll become they'll lose their sensitivity to it. It'll become normal to see people carrying guns, and if there was ever an incident where a teacher used a gun against a student, which
is very possible.
which unfortunately might actually have a high probability of occurring, then these kids are kind of scarred for life with that, and it's just.
Sorry. Also, just the idea of like introducing that many, for example, the possible risk factor of just introducing that many firearms. Even if, for example, an armed intruder comes in, it'll get that much more difficult to identify them, for example. It's almost like your body, I'll just go into a real quick metaphor. Like, it's like a virus coming in your body. You know it's alien. But if you have a whole bunch of things just like that in the school that could do the same thing to yourself, you're already dealing with your own problem. I think it just complicates issues even more if you allow the guns in the school in the first place.
Yeah, I agree with firearms, but I also feel that there needs to be a means of defense as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like the bodyguards.
There are other
School police, yeah.
or pepper spray. I mean, because the people, like all the school shootings, like it's not a heavily armed militia that goes in. I mean, it's kids and it's people that have problems that go in there. I mean, they're not trained individuals that are ready to kill, and they're coming around the corners checking the. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where you could possibly take them down with pepper spray or a taser or something like that. Like there's other avenues to pursue for defense rather than just firearms in a school.
Now, if you leave the economic issue aside, because I know this could pose a problem, but the thing that concerns me is I have, well, I'm sure we all have security on campus, right? But my problem is when do you see them that often? It's, it's kind of a hit and miss sort of thing. So if something were to happen, what's to ensure that we have 2 or 3, that they're going to get there in a timely fashion? And that's why I think we should increase campus security. And I know with the current economic problems within our school district, that may not necessarily be the most feasible. Yeah, it wouldn't be feasible.
Yeah.
But
it's really just the feasibility factor.
My problem is if you give it to a teacher, there's nothing to ensure that they won't be careless with it.
Exactly.
So
Where would
what
they
if a
keep
kid
it?
grabs it? Or what if, because a lot of our teachers may not always be the most emotionally stable people, and they just go off on a rampage because they're just as capable of using a gun in a school than a student.
Even
is.
worse, what if they leave it, for example, in like inside their desk and a kid picks it up?
Exactly.
Bottom line is we can't really trust teachers to hold guns and protect their students. There are too many variables that exist. And I think instead of allowing teachers to have guns, like you said, there should be more campus security. At my high school, if anyone wanted to walk in, they can. And I'm sure it is at your high school too.
Well, this is concerning, but my school was on a soft lockdown, and my cousin walked right in and was walking down the hallways, and then an administrator came out and was like, "What are you doing? You need to get into the office." And they were like, "Oh, well, I just walked by campus monitors," and they were able to walk like right in. So that's a little bit concerning as well.
Yeah,
And
there's protocols in place for schools to practice. I think that's like before
Our
we
school's
even
always locked up.
exactly
Yeah.
like lockdown.
You have to go
there's
to the front office.
There's immediate response from police. There's what you should do as a school, how you should lock down. I think the drills and the basics are more important that we already have to like make sure those are working. If you don't even put them into practice, you can't say they don't work, right? So.
But how appropriate is the protocol? Because I know when we go into a shelter-in-place drill, for example, we lock the doors and put a piece of tape on the window. I mean, if I'm an intruder and I see a door with a piece of tape on it, I'm not going to be like, oh, they're safe, so I'm going to go onto the, you know what I mean? Like, how effective is it? And is there, like, where could we possibly reform the protocol with the school district to improve, our safety in events like that?
There's things like, have you done hard lockdowns like that? Or?
No, I've never done a hard lockdown.
Like there's different protocols for each, and usually if you know it's a drill, then I guess but yeah, you're right though. Like that is, if anything, I think rather than arm our teachers, we should focus on like just teaching. Yeah, more effective. Like just at least
But there's
everyone
only so
knows what
much
they're
you can
doing right.
do.
Yeah,
When
exactly.
someone
Here's
walks in
another
the car.
example of a second topic. More of you are involved. Interesting, the one thing that wasn't brought up is how many kids are walking into their own school carrying guns unless there is electronic equipment when you walk into your school to make sure that no one has guns.
But that
Craig
kinda-
Scott, who is a survivor of Columbine, has a very simple statement for all of you. He was the one that was laying in the library in between actually two people who were killed, and he is the one who got everyone in the library out of the library after the two killers left the library. He will say to you, if he was sitting here, it's not guns who kill people.
Yeah,
It's
the
people who kill people. Valerie, let's get you moving.
Okay, well, when I participated in the Sun Youth Forum, we talked a lot about gay marriage. And in my group, there was actually an overall consensus that in Nevada, gay marriage should be legal. But there were many, many opinions that went in. Some people did disagree. So I want to open up the floor and ask you all how you feel.
I'll open up. I'm a fairly religious guy, and I have to admit, at the forum,
What does that mean if you're a fairly religious guy?
I follow my. I'm Christian, so I do believe in what the religion says completely. And again, no one's perfect, so that's why I would say fairly. I'm not devout as you wouldn't imagine me as like a priest or anything, but I do believe in.
I can imagine you as a priest.
Why, thank you. Anyway, but I have to say, when I was in there, I did say no, but I was very borderline, and I was convinced the other way. But from a religious point of view, I can see why they would say no to gay marriage. But in the end,
Then everyone's not Christian.
it's not just that. It's not just that. Even if the whole nation was Christian, I don't think the marriage is the problem. The whole argument is a vie for equality, and like as far as religion go, the way I see it, even my religion says everyone, for example, is a sinner, right? Sins are equal. If you do this, stealing $5 is equal to stealing $100. It's wrong. And even if the scripture does say it's bad, I think in the end, treating each other as equal human beings is more important than just specifying one thing as wrong and completely going against it. I think it's a little archaic to just stick to a very specific, like just saying introducing gay marriage is just wrong because of how bad it's been in the past.
I do agree with that. I do agree that some ideals in our society are becoming a bit archaic, and that as we progress, we see a shift in like the younger generation's ideals versus older generations. And we have to understand that it's not 2,000 years ago whenever the Bible was written, or even 100 years ago when society was vastly different than it is today. And the fact of the matter is that being openly gay is more acceptable now than it has ever been before. And who are we to deny the right of someone to love another person as equally as I would love a woman, or vice versa? You know what I mean? Like it's not right for me to judge you for how you believe, just like you shouldn't judge me for how I believe. You know what I mean? Like we live in the land of the free. So I think we should all be free when it comes to choices such as love, where it doesn't affect anybody else but you and the person you're in love with.
So you say that it doesn't affect anyone else. My personal opinion, I totally agree with you. But from the other side's perspective, they believe that it does affect how marriage is viewed, how sacred it is. So what would you say to that?
Look at the divorce rate.
Well, I'm just looking from their perspective because I feel like we all kind of.
I think one of the things that I'm a religious person as well, but what gets me is we say it's a holy union, but where are the people protesting atheists getting married? We still let them have a union. And I am personally not for it. However, I don't even think it should be a state issue, which I think most issues should be. I think the federal government, the Supreme Court, needs to make a landmark decision because you cannot have the minority of people in some of these states vote away. You can't have the majority of people vote away the rights of the minority. You just can't do that. We would suppress people. We would never have moved forward. We would never progress if the majority always suppressed the minority. And with that being said, not most of these people, I would assume, would get married in a church anyways. They would go to courthouses and they would get married in a non-religious fashion. And with that being said, I think because the only basis that I seem to see on this side is a religious issue. And if we make a law banning marriage on the basis of it's morally wrong and it doesn't fit our religion, then we're violating the First Amendment.
And to have the government decide about marriage, isn't that is a meeting of both church and government, which is one of the things our founding fathers didn't want us to do, you know what I mean? Like, it's, to have the federal government say who we can and cannot marry, in my opinion, it is a meeting of the church meets with the government, and that brings up a whole nother slew of issues.
It's more than just a religious issue, though. When you deny them marriage, you also deny them all the economic and fiscal benefits of it.
Deny them the pursuit of happiness.
I think we
That too, but
I think we need to reform that as well, though, because the problem with that is if we're fighting for marriage equality and people should be able to marry who they marry, then we should open up to polygamy as well. But then we run into a taxing issue, and because you can't.
There's, for example, what happened in my room was a lot of people that were on the anti-gay marriage side said, let's just give them the rights, but just get the word marriage out of there because,
Civil unions.
yeah.
And then reform the civil unions,
But
basically.
polygamy aside, I just think that really, even just if we can just for a moment separate the church and state, like just completely, just look at the fiscal side of this, the political side of this, where persecuting a specific group of people that, it's a land of the free, right? It's civil rights. We've already done all that, but there's still groups of people we're not representing completely. I don't see why, based on your sexual orientation, you can't get economic, pretty much rights, entitlements that everyone else has. It doesn't make sense because in the end, if you look at it economically, marriage is say union, because I can't think of a better word at the moment.
In your groups, when all of this was being talked about, was everybody as polite in your groups when this was being discussed, or were people really taking stands, and was there emotion?
There was emotion in my group, especially on gay marriage, and that's why I wanted to talk about it here.
This is a very emotional subject. I mean, there's people who feel very strongly either for or against this subject, and for the most part, people are either for or against. You're not typically middle road. And when you come to a controversial topic such as this, there tends to be high emotions and high tempers. But I mean, I feel that in my group, when we discussed it, it didn't get where it was violent or too intense. You know what I mean? It was a good conversation to have.
Joshua, let's go to you and change topic. Something obviously that's not controversial.
Yes, mine's not as controversial. Mine's about the Electoral College and whether we should keep the Electoral College, if we should go to popular vote, or if we should reform the Electoral College.
I mean, I personally see no problem currently with the Electoral College. I know the arguments about what happened, Bush and Gore, Florida and everything. But I mean, if we were to revert to a popular vote, the flyover states, the ones with not many electoral votes in the first place, would be completely ignored. More deference would be given to urban cities, populated states, California, New York.
And that's where reforming it could be a benefit, where it's based on district, because the Electoral College, if say that each district won, like say Democrats won in our district, then they would get the the vote from our district. But then whoever won the state would get the Senate votes. You know what I mean? Because the Electoral College, everyone has 2 for the Senate plus however many seats they have in the House of Representatives, right? So if we go a district by district basis, meeting the state by state basis with the Senate, will that provide a better resolution to the conflict, or what problems arise with that as well?
And I think it's important to look at it district by district, because in every state, for example, in Nevada, in Las Vegas area, I believe that we are more liberal than the people up in northern Nevada. Yeah. In California, there are people who are mostly liberal, but I'm sure that there are plenty of Republicans, conservatives as well. So
but with our current system,
to go district by district.
Yeah, that's the reason.
It would be a little bit more complicated, but I think it would be a lot more complicated. But honestly, the district idea, I think it gives the minority more of a voice.
Yeah.
Because
but do you think a rural district should have the same equal, voting, equal weight as urban city?
But see, that's the thing about districts, is that their size and proportion based on population. So this district may be larger in area-wise, but in population-wise it's the same. So like rural districts will have a larger area, but not necessarily a smaller or larger population, you know what I mean?
Like us, for instance, we're separated. We have Titus, who has a certain area, and then we have Horsford that has a certain area.
Vegas is its own district, and then there's these giant swaths of land.
Yeah.
And then because with our current system, California, the Republican vote isn't of too much importance. If you're a Republican in the state of California, how important is your vote? You know what I'm like? How we don't. There's the last Republican to win in California was Reagan, right?
Yes.
So I mean,
He won New
it's
York
been
as well.
40 years.
The problem with the
But it has been
district.
40 years in California to have a Republican governor.
Yeah.
It's true.
The feasibility issue I see with the districts is like the numbers are going to go really high. And I was thinking if you would reform maybe just proportional representation rather than, you know, whoever wins the state, like whoever's the majority in the state wins
So
the
not
whole
a
vote.
winner take all, more like what Nebraska.
Yeah,
and Maine
Nebraska
have,
and yeah.
based on
And
proportions.
even if we were to reform it, that would be a very difficult process
just in and of
to
itself.
put in place in all of the United States.
And the Constitution guarantees an electoral college.
And we don't really control the way they do it in the states.
So
That's
how
not an issue.
realistic would it be?
But then again, the Constitution left the voting up to each state. They had regulations on voting, and all of that was left to the state. So I mean, that could also become into their, you know, their power to regulate that or change it.
Also, the issue is, if I remember correctly, the parties have.
The voting.
Yeah, they just
set the voting.
they
It's
set
not
the
really
voting, and
in the
they
Constitution.
Oh, like the open primaries.
yeah,
and
and
things
the
like that.
problem is neither side will want to change the winner-take-all system because it benefits both. If they did it, they'd both be hurting each other, and unless something were to be done, I can see that as a very big complication, which is why it's never really changed at all ever since.
And imagine a candidate, you know, if we allow proportion to be a factor, many different parties will have different candidates because they can all actually have an equal chance at gaining votes. But would one candidate be able to garner 270 electoral votes if every state was based on population?
Not to mention, they also, and what in my group, what they also brought up, the reason why they like the district idea is they feel that third-party candidates would be more viable. And they think that's important because they think that the two-party system has become a problem. So they think that if we did it instead by district, we have a better chance of getting away from Republicans and Democrats and allowing more people to come in. So,
in all honesty, with the current electoral system, if everyone actually follows the rules, it's really just it's a formality. It should be like the way it works right now is that the winner-take-all system. Because of that, the electoral voters should really just follow the curve. So if we reform it, it would actually completely change the face of voting because of the fact they suddenly have more influence as electoral voters themselves. They're not going with the pack.
And the winner-take-all system isn't too big of an issue because like the Gore-Bush election in 2000, that was the first election where someone won in the popular vote, but lost in electoral college votes in over 100 years. The last time it happened was in the 1800s. So
I think
mean,
we've had 3 cases in our history where it hasn't matched.
And so, I mean, if it's not proposing that big of an issue, that's a big system to change, and that's a big change to make in our country where,
Not
like
to
you
mention
brought up,
amendments. We have to actually
yeah,
bring
like
up
you
an
brought up,
amendment.
our congressmen, the hardcore Republicans, the hardcore Democrats, they won't want to change the system. They won't want to change that. They want to keep their state.
This is low on the laundry list of things.
Exactly. The Democrats would never want to lose California. They would never want to lose that system in California.
So many things we could change to rectify the system before we would actually have to touch this electoral college.
Third parties, for me, they seem always kind of extreme. They're always on one. They're even more extreme than
I looked up at a poll and they believe that
Republicans
the
and
2
Democrats.
parties we have right now are extremely
Yeah, they're extreme, but then the third parties are even more extreme. They're usually like splinter parties.
Well, one of the things that's not extreme is the Sun Youth Forum because all opinions are expressed. Let's find out from you're the last person, right?
No, I have to.
Oh, you're the last.
Am I the last person?
Are you the last person?
I think he has to go as well.
You haven't gone, have you?
Neither of us have gone.
Yeah.
You'll be last.
All right.
You're next. All right, now let's get into it. You guys are you are the most polite group that I have had in the last 10 years.
We apologize. Or is that too nice as well?
You don't have to apologize. Just
don't apologize.
Don't apologize for how you feel.
Okay, well, we had the same topic, so I want to bring up another question that I really been itching to talk about. Recently, we had the Syrian, the chemical warfare, right?
Yeah.
And for example, after Obama had this State of the Union address, he talking about how America was exceptional. We should protect our we should protect international safety. If we let one person break the rules, everyone will do it. Putin also had another rebuttal in an article in I think it was in the New Yorker, saying, no, you're not really that special. Everyone is, and you shouldn't try to fight the rest of the world. So I just want to know your opinions on where should the U.S. be in its policing? If it should police at all, should it be isolationist like it used to be in the long, long past? How do you think we're performing now as a global power? And for example, if we could reform it in any way, like what direction do you think we should take? Because that's a serious issue. I don't think we can just spout out.
It's definitely an intense issue. As president, I think Obama has the right to say that his country is the best country. I think every president of their own country will say the same thing. But since we are the United States, we're looked at by every country, and if we make just one tiny mistake, we're also criticized. So it's very important how we handle diplomacy, and since this is where this is the area that I want to go into.
You want to be a diplomat,
Yeah, I want to
right?
be a diplomat, so I can talk about this all the time, but I'll keep it short. But I feel like with the situation in Syria, what was going on, as the United States, we've always spouted that we want to care about human rights. We want to make sure that other governments are following international law, that they're not committing grievous wrongs. So I feel like as the United States, we had to say something because we've always taken that position. But other countries are very upset at us for interfering in their own affairs, for stealing their hegemony of their state. And that's something that we need to be really careful about when we need to interfere, how we do it. And maybe not interfering, but working with the people, what aid we give, if it's military aid or if it's actually aid that is needed.
On top of that, don't forget the chemical warfare ban was a UN deal.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Where do we draw the line between the UN's responsibility and our responsibility?
Exactly. The UN was already responding to the crisis, and the big topical issue here is why is the U.S. trying to go over the heads of every single other country in the world then?
I feel the
Major
U.S.
country,
is
at
still
least.
stuck in our post-World War II mentality. After World War II, we got the mentality that we were the superpower, we were the big dogs on campus, and it's our world and we're the biggest here. And we're starting to get to the point where China's an economic powerhouse and Russia's just as powerful. And that's where the UN is useful, because that is a meeting of all nations to decide what is wrong and what is right in each nation.
The UN uses us as their police force,
Yes,
though.
because the UN, as it is a meeting of all nations, is very hesitant of taking any action. They say a lot of things, but they don't like to back it up with any action. So they rely on big countries like the United States to actually, send in the soldiers to do the dirty work, basically.
And there's also like stark opposition between the
yes.
United States
And don't we
and
as well
other world powers.
provide most of the funding for the
We
UN?
do.
I heard it was something like 70%
We
of
do.
the funding.
We provide a lot of the funding for the UN.
I think the problem is how we're getting involved. I think the United States, something goes wrong, military. We need to move in the military. Instead, I think we should cut back on going in on the military and come at a more diplomatic approach.
I don't think flexing our muscles and throwing in drone strikes is probably the best way to relay our message to Syria or, even
Well,
Afghanistan.
drone strikes mostly are in Pakistan now.
Yeah.
So,
We're
but people, if you look at the polls, people love drone strikes because there's no
no loss of life,
casualties
yeah.
from us, and I guess now we've developed the technology to the point that we can target specific terrorists.
So, do you think a major part of this problem is coming from, for example, our U.S. idea that we're the underdog, when in reality we're no longer the underdog? We were, but then we completely rocked that, that game. I don't even know what to call it. And now we're at the top, but we still think we're the underdogs. Because our culture loves underdogs. That the whole story of starting from the bottom, for example, under British rule, and then suddenly we're like a superpower. Are we still in that mentality? And do you think that's what's leading us to do these decisions? I've heard some comparisons of drone strikes, almost like we're acting like God, deciding who gets to die. I mean, it used to be a list of people to watch, but now it's almost a list of who to take down. Even though it's very careful, I'm sure. I mean,
it's actually the people that we're targeting by drone strikes are not the high-profile terrorists because we don't know where they are. We're talking about people that are suspected of terrorist activity, or they're affiliated with a certain mosque or certain region. So there's no solid evidence, there's no trial, there's nothing like that.
And are we doing that just to flex our muscles and put fear in the high priority
I
terrorists?
personally think we feel a moral obligation because most of the people that I've talked to who are pro-using military feel that the only way that we're going to stop them is if we actually go in there and use our military to stop them, because talking with them isn't going to work. I feel like we feared the spread of communism. back during the Red Scare. I think a lot of the time these communist countries feel we're doing the same thing. We're trying to force capitalism on them when they may not like it. And because we are. We're doing the exact same thing, but we don't like it when they do it to us. Instead, I think we need to respect their sovereignty and, lend a suggestion here and there, but not necessarily go in there and, oh, we don't like what you're doing, so we're going to drop a bomb and stop it.
But I don't think that, as dropping a bomb on a country, sure, it isn't a great idea, but how useful is being diplomatic going to be? I think we've already established a lot of countries don't like United States going in and telling them what to do. So why would they listen to us if we say, okay, let's sit down at a table and just talk this out?
We cut aid. We cut economic aid, and that is pretty effective. We also put barriers on trading with them, and that since we are such a big
Unfortunately,
economy.
we also have to cut the discussion because of time. We could have actually spent the entire hour discussing this because we weren't even scratching the surface.
No.
Last but not least.
Last but not least is the controversial topic of socialized healthcare, which I know stirs a few emotions in some of you. And
socialized healthcare?
Yeah, so not necessarily
Affordable care?
Obamacare.
You mean the Affordable Care Act.
Or just
Or
any,
just,
Just
or
in
just
general.
Should we
in
have
general.
socialized?
Should we have socialized healthcare? Should we force it upon the citizens to have healthcare?
Well, I don't know. It's almost like different economic policies. It works either way. Like for example, you can increase demand. That's I forgot what it was called. And then there's Reaganomics where you increase supply. Either way works. In real life, if you follow it completely, I think it's the issue of like for example, we're just a nation that historically hates to pay taxes, like in any way, shape, or form. We just hate it.
Nobody wants to pay taxes.
Exactly,
Nobody wants
but
to pay, here's my
we pay the
income.
lowest, actually, of any
Yes,
industrialized country.
yes, we do.
Like in fact, even like when we were rebelling against Britain, we didn't pay taxes. But so it's another issue entirely. But I think part of this whole struggle is this historic, almost pretty much hatred of tax itself. Like the idea of tax just vilifies half of this. Just
Well, we hate anything that we are forced to do. As American people, anything you force us to do, we're going to balk. We're like rebellious teenagers. You tell us to do one thing, and we're not going to want to do it because it's a restriction of our rights. But socialized healthcare, one of the the pros about it is that, so even in Las Vegas, UMC is $1 million, like millions of dollars in deficits because if you go there, you cannot be turned down for healthcare. They cannot deny you. And who pays for that? Us as taxpayers pay for the people who have no insurance.
That's really what socialized healthcare is trying to solve. It's trying to make sure that these individuals who don't buy insurance, that go to the emergency room when they're really sick, when the medical costs are like out of the world, that's why our taxes are, higher. So if we gave them health insurance, then that would lessen the impact and actually keep them healthy.
And most first world countries have some sort
Yes.
of
Great Britain,
socialized
yeah.
They do.
healthcare.
Most countries in Europe, India, Canada, just
And in all honesty, the Affordable Care Act wasn't it's not truly socialized in the sense of like Canada. That's why I dare, if I dare say this, he kind of put a capitalist spin on a socialist idea in a sense, because he still allowed it to the private insurance companies to compete to offer them lower premiums. The President Obama.
But the president is not the one who
No.
voted the
No,
passage of the Affordable Care Act.
The act itself.
Right.
Then.
No, the act itself, no. But I give him credit for it because he's president. It was
it's
his
Obamacare.
landmark
it
legislation.
is his landmark
So,
legislation.
But with that being said, I think it definitely needed a reform. But how we reformed it, I don't necessarily agree with.
A lot of people are upset about the president's handling of how the the website healthcare.gov, how it was down, not accepting responsibility. But we're not hearing that. And then obviously the insurance letters that came in the mail that's saying, oh, well, your insurance doesn't meet the guidelines anymore, so you lost your insurance. So
In all honesty, have you ever actually I've just seen people struggle with online anything with government, for example, like taxes, filing anything. I've just to segue real quick, I find it kind of ridiculous that you complain about a website when the government historically just isn't really good at that stuff.
Well,
And
they fixed
also,
it now. Finally.
also another thing I don't think a lot of people realize is one of the reasons why we have this rising cost in health insurance cost is in general these procedures cost so much because the people that manufacture the machinery, the equipment, they have these special deals where it's between the manufacturer and the hospital. Hospital is not allowed to ask for a different price, and they're not allowed to deal with anyone else, or they won't get the products anymore. And these rising prices are out of control as well, and it's not in the public view. And another problem with this is there's so little known about the whole bill. Like, no one knows the whole bill
Exactly.
at all.
Most people don't even understand Obamacare or socialized healthcare. They've just, like you two said, they talk about, oh, the website's not working. That was
Yeah.
the big concern, which is ridiculous.
I think educating the public is definitely something that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Most people don't have but honestly, I mean, when it comes to like voting season, like when you're voting for like the president of the United States, are you really looking at all of the policy positions that they're taking? But I think that generally people just focus on the little things.
That's part of the problem, is that we're too heavily influenced by media. Like, the Republicans put the negative spin, Obamacare, on it, and that just automatically riles people up. That they have a negative connotation with that as it is. The internet goes down, the media blows it up, and everyone's worried about the internet, not the actual
The bill.
the
A
parts
lot
of
of
the
people
bill itself.
supported
And
it as well, though.
actually, it was Romney Care to begin with as well.
Oh, yes, that-
Massachusetts,
ironically.
he started it in
But
Massachusetts.
then you're talking about federalism. Some things are better handled at a state level than they are according to the federal government.
But I don't think
I-
this is a
you know what?
policy that can.
I think the viewing audience gets it. They know what's going on. I want to make sure, and I want to move really, really quickly. We're going to start right here and go right down. What did you learn from participating in Sun Youth Forum? What did you learn?
The thing that I think that's the most important thing that I learned personally was to hear opposing views and respect them. I think a lot of the time we spend when it talks about politics is downgrading other people's opinions and shutting them off. Instead, we embraced other people's opinions, though we may not have agreed with them, we accepted them and did not demonize them for believing that, and that's the most important thing I got out of it.
Thank you. That was great.
I think the most important thing I learned is how to speak up intelligently and to say my opinions quickly, because that was important when you're in a room with 30 kids and we have to talk about these political issues. And it was also nice to see that other people were interacting and we were all listening to each other. A lot of times in school, no one really participates in class discussions, so this was a nice change.
Thank you. Great.
I learned that not all the topics are black and white, where there's so much more to a topic than what you believe. And I feel that in our arrogance, we believe that, this is how I feel, this is how it needs to be. But in the Sun Youth Forum, I experienced so many other people's lives, and I learned like topics that they are so familiar with and that they feel very passionately about, and stories behind that, and that it's hard for us to decide on capital punishment, gay marriage, things like that, when we haven't experienced problems or shortcomings with that firsthand. And it's opened my eyes a lot to the problems, the plight, and just the passion that other people have about stuff.
Thank you.
I think that if this Congress conducted themselves like the students at the Sun Youth Forum, we get a lot more done, because students came from both sides of the aisle and we created comprehensive solutions to these problems given to us. And it was a place of understanding. We learned both sides, and so I had an enlightening experience from it.
You glad you did it?
Yeah, very glad.
I learned how to see in gray. Like Blake said, there is black and white, both sides to everything. But when you hear opinions from all these different people with their own life experiences and why they have the opinions they have, then you learn to see both sides and look at both arguments, and yours change. Like, I think that's what you experienced as well. And so you're in the middle, and that's when you're in the middle with other people, you can make the solutions that solve these problems and basically bring innovation, and that's what inspired me.
Like Josh said, I really learned the importance of like respecting others' opinions, because for example, on gay marriage, I actually did change my opinion because of that. If I was closed-minded, I would never have done it. So open-mindedness is one thing. And also the realization that just because on the polls, for example, like our generation doesn't vote apparently, it's great to realize that no, we're not all like that, that it's possible for people like this. It's great to meet all of you, to know that they're out there. it's a great opportunity. I think it was amazing.
What was your favorite moment at the Sun Youth Forum?
I have to say it was the first 4 hours. It was the first half of the debate. We only talked about education in Nevada and the fact that see different passions arise, see different ideas surface, and then have all of us, instead of constantly debate on it, actually just talk, point out positives and negatives. I think that was really important.
I want to thank all of you. Congratulations for being selected in your group. I think it's very obvious why you were selected in your group. For the adults who are watching, for the teachers who are watching this program, we're in pretty good shape. The future is bright, and that's very, very exciting. I will tell you that. But thank you for your participation. You know, I opened talking about the dream of Ruthie Deskin and Hank Greenspan, and they would be very, very pleased because what they wanted to achieve, what they wanted to accomplish. In my group, the greatest thing was the two students who said, "My father was in the Sun Youth Forum." Until next year, until next year, thank you very much. The Sun Youth Forum, thank you, and thank you.
Thank you.